Hey there, it's Martin from the AppMaster.io team, and today we're going to talk about how we can restrict access to objects in AppMaster.io. Now, we'll first talk about how we can create user groups and connect middleware to our endpoints. Then we'll see how we can check access to objects using our data models and business processes. And lastly, we'll see how we can filter information on our front end. Let's start out with user groups and middleware. We can define these user groups using the authentication module, automatically installed by default with every new project. You can find it in the module section and just click on this auth module and you'll be able to see the groups setting over here. As you can see, by default, you already have two groups, admins and users. You can add new groups over here, define their label, a tooltip, and then some aesthetic preferences. You can also define if users can sign up directly and to which sign up group they'll be defined when they first register. Let's save this. Then in any of the endpoints that you have defined, you will be able to define which user groups have access to it. So let's go to one of them. Let's say maybe auth. Or let's say user, and we have this post users, and in the middleware section you will be able to see this token auth. If you now click the gear icon, you'll be able to enable or disable this middleware, signifying that if you enable it, the user will have to be registered in the system to actually access this endpoint. In here you'll also be able to define the allowed groups. For example, at the moment, only admins can add new users and use this endpoint. You can also add more of them. For example, now partners and admins have access to this endpoint. Fantastic. Now, anytime that a user goes to your web application, to use this endpoint, they will have to first log in with the respective account, and the same will happen with your API. Let's see now how we can use data models to restrict access to objects. Imagine the following scenario. We have some users in our system. We also have a company, and each user belongs to a specific company. We also then have cases related to specific companies. Our objective now is to find all cases to which the user would have access. So all cases of the company to which the user belongs. We can do that in a business process, just like this. So we start out, we get the current user using the authentication module, and we not only get the user model itself, but we also get the data about the related company with connection. After that, we expand the user, getting all of its fields, and extract the company. We then expand the company and get its ID. After that, we search our database for cases. And in this case, we only search for cases which have the company ID equal to the company ID to which the user belongs to. We then get the data and output it from our business process. If we now connect this business process to a table on our front end and a user logs in, they'll only see information about the cases of their company. And lastly, let's see how we can define access on our front end. And we can do this in two ways, either user groups or using a filter in a table. First of all, we can define access to a specific page using the settings of the page. For example, let's go to the users page and click on the gear icon. In here, you'll be able to find this function called show for groups. You'll be able to define the user groups which have access to this page. Now, keep in mind that this only restricts the web page itself. It does not restrict the endpoint. So, unauthorized users will still be able to access the endpoint through the API if you don't define the middleware inside of the endpoint settings. Another option that we have is to actually filter a table. So, for example, let's go to the cases table, and here we again go to the settings, we go to triggers, and you'll be able to find this action called load data over here. If we now access its settings, we'll be able to define some filters. For example, filtering all of the cases on a specific company. So company ID equal, for example, to 2. Now this table will now only load the data for those cases where the company ID equals to 2. Now, yet again, this doesn't actually restrict access to data. It only filters out the information that is shown on the web page. Unauthorized users can still access the data if you haven't defined the middleware for your endpoints. I hope that you enjoyed these tips and tricks on how to work with objects and restricting access to them in AppMaster.io. If you have more questions, drop them down in the comments or head out to our documentation section on the website to learn more. You can also chat directly with our team members in our Telegram community. Have a nice day.